Canada has transformed dramatically over the past century. Things that were completely normal, even encouraged, are now serious crimes. This isn't just quirky history, it reveals how radically our values and knowledge have shifted. 1. Selling heroin as cough medicine. Until 1908, Canadian pharmacies sold heroin-based cough syrup without prescriptions. Bayer marketed heroin as safe for children, while cocaine appeared in teething medication and tonics. Respectable pharmacies sold products from trusted pharmaceutical companies, with advertisements openly promoting heroin cough syrup for kids and cocaine toothache drops for fussy babies. Opium dens operated openly in Vancouver and Victoria, facing no legal consequences. Growing awareness of addiction led to the Opium Act of 1908, expanded in 1911 to include heroin, cocaine, and morphine, though the shift was entangled with racism and anti-Asian sentiment as much as genuine public health concerns. Possessing heroin today carries serious criminal charges, while trafficking has mandatory minimum sentences. Selling cocaine or heroin as medicine would be among the most serious drug crimes possible in modern Canada. 2. Child labor in factories and mines. Children aged 8 to 9 worked full-time in factories, mines, and mills throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries. 12-hour days, 6 days a week in dangerous conditions saw boys crawling through narrow mine spaces while girls operated dangerous textile machinery. Child labor formed the economic foundation of many industries, as poor families desperately needed their children's wages to survive. In 1891 Ontario, 10-year-olds worked from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. with only brief breaks, and children regularly lost limbs in accidents, died in mine collapses, or developed chronic lung diseases. Reform movements and unions pushed relentlessly for child labor laws, while compulsory education proved crucial. Children in school couldn't simultaneously work in factories. As industrial efficiency improved, child labor became less economically necessary, allowing society to prioritize children's welfare. Canadian law now strictly prohibits employing children in industrial work, with minimum ages typically set at 14 to 16 with significant restrictions. Employing a child under 14 or in dangerous conditions constitutes child abuse, punishable by substantial prison sentences. 3. Drinking and driving. For most of automotive history, driving after drinking was perfectly legal and socially acceptable. 1950s and 60s businessmen routinely had 3 martini lunches and drove back to work, while police might simply tell drunk drivers to be more careful and send them on their way. Many people genuinely didn't connect alcohol consumption with driving impairment, and before breathalyzers were introduced in 1954, police had to rely entirely on subjective observations. Social attitudes treated drunk driving like jaywalking, a minor indiscretion at worst. The phrase "one for the road" literally meant having a final drink before driving home, which restaurant staff would cheerfully serve. Mounting evidence of alcohol-related deaths led to stricter laws, with criminal code amendments in 1969 setting the 0.08% blood alcohol limit. MAD, or Mothers Against Drunk Driving, raised public awareness throughout the 1980s, while breathalyzer technology finally made consistent enforcement possible. Impaired driving is now a serious criminal offense, with the first offense resulting in a criminal record, license suspension, fines up to $2,000, and potential jail time. 4. Residential schools and forced assimilation. From the 1870s through 1996, the Canadian government forcibly removed Indigenous children from their families and placed them in residential schools designed to kill the Indian in the child, systematically erasing Indigenous cultures, languages, and identities. Over 150,000 children were taken, often by force or under threat, and once there, they were forbidden to speak their languages and punished harshly for expressing any aspect of Indigenous identity. Children suffered widespread physical, sexual, and psychological abuse, while malnourishment, disease, and death were tragically common. At least 4,000 children died in these schools, many buried in unmarked graves that families were never told about. Indigenous activists and survivors fought for decades to expose the truth about the residential school system, with the last schools finally closing in the 1990s. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission that operated from 2008 to 2015 officially acknowledged the system as cultural genocide, and Prime Minister Harper issued a formal apology in 2008. These actions would today violate the Charter of Rights, criminal code provisions against child abuse, and international human rights law. Forcibly removing children based on ethnicity would be prosecuted as a crime against humanity under international law. 5. Refusing to hire women or firing them from marriage. Until the 1960s and 70s, employers could legally refuse to hire women, pay them substantially less than men, or fire them simply for getting married or becoming pregnant. Many professions barred women entirely through explicit policies, while banks routinely required female employees to resign immediately upon marriage. This wasn't hidden discrimination, it was explicit legal policy that everyone openly acknowledged and defended. Job advertisements had separate male and female sections, with the best-paying and most prestigious positions listed exclusively under male. Women were barred from practicing law and medicine in most provinces, and medical schools that did admit women imposed strict quotas. Married women couldn't obtain credit cards in their own names until the 1970s, while female teachers and civil servants in many jurisdictions had mandatory retirement policies triggered by marriage. The women's liberation movement fought tirelessly for equality throughout the 1960s and 70s, achieving major victories with the Canadian Human Rights Act in 1977 and the Charter in 1982, which made gender discrimination illegal. Economic shifts that made women's labor more valuable and normalized two-income families also drove change. Gender discrimination in employment now violates human rights law across Canada. Pay inequity is illegal, and firing women for pregnancy or marriage can result in substantial financial damages. 6. Dumping industrial waste into rivers. Factories, mills, and mines simply dumped their waste directly into rivers, lakes, and oceans without any treatment or oversight. Chemical plants discharged toxic substances, mining operations released heavy metals, and pulp mills poured contaminated effluent into waterways. This was standard operating procedure, not corporate misconduct. There were essentially no environmental regulations to violate. The Grassy Narrows paper mill dumped mercury into the English Wabigoon River system from 1962 to 1970, poisoning the indigenous community with mercury that caused lasting neurological damage across generations. Sydney's tar ponds accumulated 700,000 tons of toxic waste from a century of steel production, creating one of North America's most contaminated sites. Rivers near industrial facilities turned different colors depending on production schedules, and some became so polluted they actually caught fire. The Canada Water Act of 1970 and the Environmental Contaminants Act of 1975 established the first comprehensive regulations, while scientific understanding of bioaccumulation and long-term toxic effects continued to improve. Companies must now obtain detailed permits specifying exact discharge limits for every substance they release, and unauthorized discharge is criminal under both the Canadian Environmental Protection Act and the Fisheries Act. Penalties include fines reaching into the millions of dollars and imprisonment for responsible individuals, while companies remain liable for cleanup costs and damages that can extend for decades. Society has transformed profoundly in just a few generations. Each ban came from painful lessons learned through tragedy, as we began valuing human welfare over convenience or profit. What once seemed normal is now criminal, and what we accept today may one day horrify future generations. As knowledge and values evolve, laws keep changing, reminding us how far we've come and how far we still have to go. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear what surprised you the most.